come and do one of these things.
Right, we are live on LinkedIn. I am here with Dr. Kirk Borne, who is the Principal Data Scientist and Executive Advisor at Booz Allen Hamilton. He is one of the top global influencers in big data and data science and social media. So welcome to the show, Dr. Kirk Borne.
Just call me Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kate. It's great to be here. Hello, folks out there.
Today we're going to talk about data literacy and data democratization. So Kirk is an expert in this space, and I have a lot of questions lined up for him, but if you have a question you want to ask, put that in the comments below and we'll make sure to try and get to it. So I think what we can get started with is, what exactly is data literacy?
Well, that's a very good place to start. Define your terms.
Yes.
So I used to call data literacy sort of like one of the basic literacies, like reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's one of those things that we just need to teach people of all ages to know how to work with data, read data, analyze data. And then I actually read a formal definition which incorporated those pieces, which is data literacy actually has a formal definition of the ability to read data, analyze data, work with data, and argue with data.
And whose definition is that? Or is
it came from, I think it's Jordan Morrow is his name.
Jordan Morrow from Click.
Click, exactly.
Yes, great.
And so I actually do a data literacy workshop where I actually step through each of those 4 steps, reading data, that is being able to look at it in the same way you look at letters in a sentence. As a child, first of all, that's uninterpretable, but you take those letters, you can form words and sentences, and so the same way with the data, we start being able to make sense of the numbers.
Yeah.
And then you can start analyzing them in different ways. So that's an analysis step, and then sort of the work with data. That is, you can start combining data sets to create models or to create business decisions. And at the end of the day, the last phase of data literacy is being able to create an argument with data that is actually present an evidence-based, data-based argument for something using data. And so I think those are the signs of being literate with data, to be able to use it in those ways.
And so why would you say, I keep hearing that, hey, everybody has to be data literate. Why is it so important for people to be data literate?
Well, because the world is digital, first of all.
Yeah.
And if you think about the things that we carry in our hands called cell phones, every mobile home, there you go, every single person seems to have one these days. I have 4 grandkids, and well, not the youngest one, he's just born. But all
the newborn came with a cell phone?
No, he didn't come with one attached, but the other ones who are all young all have a phone in their hand.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is that we're all generating data, using data, creating data, and companies are making money from our data.
Yeah.
We are dependent on it. Just imagine if you use an app to buy something or an app to find your location, to find something on a map.
Which I do that often. I get lost.
Me too.
Yeah.
And so we're always using data. So if you don't really understand the data that's going on there, not only do you not really understand what's the technology capable of in your hand, but you're also missing out on the technological revolution that can create the next best job for you.
All right, and we got a couple comments here. So Jacob from Click said, "Woohoo, Click!"
Yay, Click! All right.
And Jordan said he loves the shout out, so he said thanks.
Yeah, so see, I just was remembering Jordan's name off the top of my head, which is a miracle today.
Yeah.
I just finished a 4-hour workshop here at ODSC, so the fact that I can remember anything is remarkable.
I let him have lunch first, guys. So, we are at the Open Data Science Conference. I forgot to mention that we're here in San Francisco. I kind of forget where I am sometimes.
Yeah.
So
it's virtual world. You can be anywhere. So we're actually in a boardroom in a hotel right outside the airport. So wherever you can make data happen, make it happen.
Exactly, and the conference is right out there. If I don't forget, I'll take the phone out and show people around the conference and stuff.
Yes. Ask the man on the street what's going on, so to speak. The woman on the street.
The woman on the street, exactly. All right, so next question is, how do we know that somebody is data literate? Obviously, you're data literate, right?
Right.
But where do we draw the line of somebody who is data literate or not data literate?
Well, first of all, it's knowing how to use data in a sentence, so to speak. For example, some people just refer to data as a 4-letter word, which it is a 4-letter word. But,
the D word?
But I mean, people talk about artificial intelligence a lot of the time. It's more based upon maybe some of the more hype type of stuff that's in the news about artificial intelligence, and so people don't really know what they're talking about per se. They're just not literate in it. And the same thing with data. I mean, we talk about data sometimes as an invasion of privacy and all this other stuff. But data is what powers your phone, which powers your car, it powers your shopping, it powers your travel, it powers everything.
Yeah.
So all the conveniences of modern life are powered by data. So understanding that and being able to carry a conversation about that is being data literate. Another part of data literacy is just recognizing data wherever you see it. So I actually give a little presentation with people. I show them pictures, I show them maps, I show them satellite photos, I show them data tables, I show them all kinds of stuff. I show them a picture of my face, and I said, which ones of these things are data? And it turns out.
Can I take a guess?
Yes.
Is it all of them?
You're right.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything is data. So even like recognizing my face and the sentiment on my face, there's apps for that. They can even recognize symptoms of illness now just by facial expression. And so apps are being developed around all these kinds of data. So to first of all not be scared of data, the four-letter word, and to see the value and be able to talk about that value. That's being data literate.
There's actually an app, I passed by it somewhere at the expo, in the expo hall at the conference, where if you pass by, it kind of tells you if you're happy, sad, it guesses your age and all this stuff.
I better not go there.
It said I think it said I was tired or something, and I am a little bit because of the time difference, but.
Well, there's time difference in the multi-hour workshops that we're teaching while we're here.
All right, a couple people said hello, including my brother, Steve. Hi, he said hello from New York.
Hey, Steve.
All right, a couple questions came in. So Bizwajid is asking, what skills are required to be a master in data literacy?
Well, data literacy is not so much a mastery as a way of thinking. I want to say it that way.
Okay. To me, it's like reading.
Yeah, that's a good example. So reading is a very good example, right?
Yeah, because that's your example.
So you start off in school when you're very young, and you learn how to write the letters of the alphabet. Okay, so I have grandkids who are doing this now. They're just learning to write the alphabet, right? And so one of my granddaughters, her name has the letter M twice in her name. Her name is Memphis.
Memphis with two M's?
M-E-M.
Oh, got it. I thought like.
But she doesn't realize that those two M's are the same M, so she writes them completely differently.
Well, one is capital, one is lowercase.
Yes, but even so, even when she's writing it lowercase, you say first learn lowercase. So initially you're just sort of replicating something, and then you're actually understanding what the pieces mean.
Right.
Then you're able to put it together to make words, and then make words together to make sentences, and sentences together to make paragraphs, and ultimately, if possible, you create amazing writings, and you could become a famous author.
Yeah.
And think of the same thing with music, the 8 notes and the normal musical octaves. Just think of all the great music that comes out of a very small number of separate musical tones.
Right.
And so data literacy is being able to think about data in that way. That is, it's how can I put it together to create value, to see a connection, to tell a story, to make a decision. And so the master of data literacy, if you will, comes through practice in the same way reading and writing comes through more and more practice. So the question had to do, how does one become like the master of this? I think it's just more and more practice.
All right, practice, guys.
Practice makes data literacy.
Yes. So are there any industries out there that are kind of doing data literacy better than others?
Well, first of all, I think the way to think about that is those who basically have understood that the real thing you should say when you talk about your data as an organization is not how much you have, but how much value you're creating from it.
Okay.
So there have literally been conferences several years ago, more than today, where I would go to conferences and people would brag about how much data they have. But that's not a differentiator. Everyone's got a lot of data.
Look at my big data.
Yeah. So if everyone says we got data, so that doesn't distinguish your company from your competition, because we've all got piles of data. And so the companies that really get it, they realize that social media stream is useful data. Customer call centers, whether it's a phone call or actual logs of the phone call, or feedback in the app, that's data.
Right.
Sales records, data. Marketing campaign successes, data. What your competitors are doing in the market, you read their news stories, you see what research or articles are talking about them. Data. If you start seeing all these things as data, as input to your decision making and value creation in your organization, then that makes you really a very data literate organization and/or industry. So I would say certainly in healthcare they've picked this up for years. I mean for a very long time, health data standards have been around, and they haven't been as mature as they are today. But electronic health records, for example, these things have been around a long time. And so organizations like that have recognized the value in organizing data in ways that can make them reusable and searchable
and private, very confidential.
And private, and all those kind of things. So in terms of understanding all those things, including that, that data privacy and ethical use of data issue, I say the healthcare industry.
Whenever I think of healthcare, I'm like, oh, privacy, yep.
It's certainly one of the biggest. Another would be financial institutions,
Yeah.
banking, and other ways, because literally the whole banking world is data, right?
Right.
I mean, banks don't actually send cash to one another. It's all digital transactions. Even most of the stuff we do with banking now is either in the app in our phone or an ATM machine. It's all digital interaction. So banks and financial world has always dealt with numbers, obviously, by definition.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they've done such a great job. I know there are big regulations out there that are requiring data at, higher levels of granularity, and some things just don't tie back to the golden source of data, so there might be issues,
Right.
but I guess they've been working with it longer.
Yeah, so I would say as a community, we're growing in our own maturity
Yeah.
for exactly those reasons. We see a lot more discussion now on data governance than we ever used to. We're coming back now to data management. I mean, data management has been around a long time. And people just said, oh, we're sort of past that now. We're doing machine learning and AI.
I was just going to say, just change the name of it.
But if you're not managing, governing, cleaning, organizing, modeling your data, you are not providing a very good source to the modelers and the algorithms that you're building.
Yeah.
And so we're coming right back to the value of those data fundamentals. So data literacy is, again, sort of recognizing the fundamental value of all these different components of your data pipeline.
Yeah. And so Craig just asked a question that I think goes back to about a minute of what we were talking about. He's asking, what is the delineation of data to big data? Because we started talking about how companies have all this data. So what would be the difference between just data and big data?
Well, my sort of take on big data has little to do with the volume of the data.
Okay.
I always emphasize two aspects of big data besides the big volume, and then there's big variety and big value.
Yeah.
Okay, so I say we used to talk about the 3 V's of big data. I say that volume is the most annoying one because people would just talk about that and it's ridiculous.
It's the most common one, right?
And big data variety is the greatest one for discovery potential, which I'll talk about in a second. And data velocity is the most challenging one because dealing with high-speed data coming at you, streaming at you nonstop, that's probably the most challenging thing. But when I think of what is the value of big data versus just what one might call traditional data, because companies have had data forever.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about the initial Roman census of the Roman world 2,000 years ago. That was a lot more data than anyone had ever handled before. But it was probably about a couple hundred numbers, referring to the populations of a couple hundred settlements around the Roman Empire. Well, okay, maybe that's not the right number. Maybe it's 2,000 numbers, but is that big data?
Still, no.
But that was way more
at that time, probably,
information, numbers that anyone ever had handled before. So the traditional definition of big data is more data than your systems and your tools and processes are able to handle. So I would say even the Roman Empire had big data, but that's really not really what's different today. What's different today is all these different dimensions of the data. We have more perspectives. For a given customer, like I said, we have sales data, we have marketing data, we have customer call data, we have demographic data. We have what is the customer saying about our product on social media.
Yeah.
We have all these insights and dimensions and customers, patients, employees, jet engines, everything. We have multiple views and perspectives. So we've never had this degree of dimensionality of data that we've ever had before. So I always like to use this cartoon of the blind man feeling the elephant. Maybe you know this story.
I love elephants, but tell me.
So there's this, I think it was a Hindu sort of metaphor anyway. So the idea was that there's the blind man feeling the elephant. They're all feeling different parts of the elephant, so they have a completely different description. So one feels the leg of the elephant, says, oh, it's a tree trunk. And one feels the tail, said, no, it's a rope. And someone's feeling the body of this big elephant, said, no, it's a wall. And then someone feels the tusk, and they say, no, it's a spear. Another one is feeling like the big ear, and they say, no, it's a fan. So everyone has a completely different description of this complex system. But once you take the blinders off, or another way to say it, tear down the data silos, start integrating all of your insights and information from all the different dimensions by which you're collecting insights about this complex system. Now you can see what it really is and what it's capable of. Whereas before, you had really no idea of what it was capable of because you never shared all those insights across the different parts of an organization.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do want to get into kind of how do we break down those silos and see the full picture.
Well, you can burn them down, but that's probably illegal. I think arson is against the law. But anyway, so for me, it starts off with proofs of value. I mean, people talk about proofs of concept, but a proof of value that is build some data. I don't want to say algorithm, but some data product.
Okay.
A product might be a model. For example, a recommendation engine on your website is a product. Maybe it's some open source data set that you can share with other people. Maybe it's a new top 10 marketing campaigns that we need to target our customers with because they like certain things. So create data products, but build that sort of minimal viable products that people call it. I like to say the minimal lovable product. So when you build that proof of value, people will start seeing the value of what we have here. And once people start seeing that, even from a small implementation, it starts building up the momentum. The advocacy across the organization starts to grow, and people say, "Hey, yeah, we can do this. Let's throw our data in. Let's share our data into this story."
Right.
And so the customer journey that you're now improving and operating on as a business, you start bringing in all these other viewpoints, sort of like the blind man and the elephant. We're not just looking at one aspect of the customer, but we see the holistic thing and see what all this is capable of. So people will almost start volunteering. So I worked on an astronomy project, for example, for years and years ago, where astronomers around the world got together to share all of our data. And it was like the first reaction from people was, like I say, was the data mining example. The data are mine, and you can't have them.
Data mining.
So everyone was holding tight to their data. But once people start seeing there was a tremendous amount of discovery that was happening as these different pieces of data were brought together that were never brought together before. So, wow, look at this new insight, because we never saw this connection before. And then other people wanted to add their data, then their data. And so before long, it became an international wave. And so we had 20 different government federations who all combined.
They saw the value of
to do this. And the very same people who were saying, "I'll never share my data with anyone," were now like promoting sharing of data to everybody across the world. And so again, there's sort of context there, and that is astronomy data is open data. It's not like the same as personal data, like privacy issues around health data or finance data. I understand that, but within an organization, to what extent you can share across boundaries within the organization, do that.
Yeah.
And the way you build that sort of momentum and desire to do that is by showing these small proofs of value. Because once people see, hey, they're getting, that group's getting credit for working with this other group, and we want to be part of that story too.
Yeah, exactly.
So in a sense, there's a FOMO thing, like fear of missing out thing. But on the other hand, it's also a business sense about it too. And that is the best value for my business is for us to work together to build that full data engine or whatever you want to call it. It's a discovery engine, basically discover whatever your domain is discovering. How that works through the data.
All right.
So I see Jordan is talking to us.
Yes, Jordan has a question. So he says, I'd love to get Kirk's thoughts on the role data science plays with data literacy and how they interact. The majority of data users aren't data scientists. So what are your two thoughts on the interaction between the two?
Good question. So I don't necessarily draw a line that says someone needs to have a PhD or something like that to be a data scientist. Primarily because I say data science, the two most important things in data science are the data and the science.
Yes.
Okay.
That sounds familiar,
and
right?
You've probably heard this before.
Probably, earlier today.
In fact, I know you've heard this before because you were in the room when I said it. But it's not, as silly as it sounds, it's not meant to be silly because the data are really the evidence, the objective truth, the objective material that's going to tell you about whatever it is you're working on.
Yeah.
And science is the process by which we build a model to infer what's going on from the data. We test and validate that inference through experimentation. We see if it really makes sense.
Yeah.
So data literacy is part of that. It's not independent of that. Data literacy is really the ability to know what data is capable of, what can I do with data, what do I need to do with it. For example, if you have continuous streams of data, and you want to do, for example, some kind of analysis that requires discrete values.
Yeah.
So maybe this audience understands, for example, a market basket analysis or maybe Bayes analysis. So a classification is a discrete thing, right? So either you're this or that. Either you have cancer
yes
or you
or
don't.
no, yeah.
Either this email is spam or it's not.
Yeah.
Now again, there's a probabilistic answer there, but you've got to come up with a discrete answer. So sometimes you have streaming numbers and you need to create bins, discrete values. And there's other algorithms like regression where you're fitting a line through a curve. And maybe you want to take discrete values and turn it to numeric values.
Yeah.
So I actually did this with my students. I actually made up a survey where people answered a question. It was made up data. And I was basically tell me whether you dislike very much or like very much or just neutral about pizza versus ice cream or something like this. And we found this correlation. But I said to them, how can you correlate words? Well, let's turn this into what's called a Likert scale, a 1 to 5 scale. Mm-hmm. So just take words and transform them to numbers. So data literacy understands the types of data you have, the transformations you need to do the data, and then what can you do with it?
Yeah.
What kind of discovery can you do? Can you discover new segments of the population? Can you discover correlations? Should you be looking for anomalies or outliers? So data literacy is sort of like, again, it's the alphabet, it's the words, it's the equivalent of writing sentences and paragraphs and turning it into a great novel.
And data science is like Shakespeare, or?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
You're right.
There you go. So it's basic writing and reading versus understanding.
Well, the 4 R's: writing, arithmetic, and R.
Yeah. Norris is asking if this talk is going to be archived somewhere. Yes, it's going. You'll be able to find it on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Story by Data is the channel. All right, Naive has a question. Do we have any framework for data literacy, example, to measure the maturity of data literacy?
Well, that's a good question. I think we do. I'm not going to think of it off the top of my head here, but I actually have done work with the Oceans of Data Institute, which is in Waltham, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So they're part of the ADC Education Development Corporation. And I've done several workshops with them where we actually created frameworks for data literacy. I'm sure the Click people and Jordan Morrow, they have done things like this, I'm sure. So Jordan can probably chime in on that one. I've also worked with the BHEF, the Business Higher Education Forum.
Okay.
So it's a business and higher education collaboration.
Yeah.
And in principle, it wasn't formed initially around data science, but it was basically what are the business needs for hiring and what is higher education producing, and making sure that the two meet, that people are being taught the things that businesses need. Yeah. And so when this whole big data science world ignited, like a firestorm in the last few years, all of a sudden everyone is saying, are we teaching the right things? And then companies are saying, are you teaching the right things? Are we hiring the right thing? Everyone's having all these big questions about it. And so data literacy became a real core component of the documents and reports that came out of that BHEF. Mm-hmm. And I actually participated in meetings with them both in New York City and in Washington, D.C. Yeah. And so those are two organizations, and there's others out there. So I mean, there's actually a growing list of organizations who are focused on that framework as being asked there. And so I would encourage people to go look both at the BHEF, Business Higher Education Forum, specifically around data literacy. Okay. And the Oceans of Data Institute. I love that name.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Swimming in data. But
not a lake? Not a data lake? Data ocean.
At first I was a little annoyed because we have data lakes and streams of data, oceans of data, seas of data, fire hoses of data,
all comes back to
data
water.
pools. I said, why do we have all these water metaphors?
And data is the new oil. So it's very confusing. Oil and water don't mix.
There you go. Thank you very much. So, bonus points for Kate today. Oil and water don't mix. Definitely.
So actually, yeah, I think Click also has a survey you can take online. If Jordan's still on, Jordan, if you can add the link where people can take that. It's like a short quiz. It takes 5 minutes, and you can see how data literate you are. You can become a data steward or data. There are different levels.
I actually took that quiz.
Did you pass?
I was a little worried.
I was worried too, but I scored the top.
I did actually do A-okay. Because you never know the question.
Yeah, exactly. It's a test.
You don't really know exactly
but it's not meant to trick you.
What part of your knowledge is being
You're
tested.
too smart for the test. That's the problem.
I have had that experience. I actually once failed a chemistry test.
Because you were too smart for it.
I was too smart.
I can see that.
Because actually the TA who graded the test knew less than me, and I was an undergraduate. Then I took it to the professor. Then I took it to the dean of the college. Yeah. Who then became the provost for the university, and he finally overruled and gave me an A+ on the exam. And then a month later he congratulated me, because I had the highest academic honors in graduation that year. And I said, we've met before. And I said, yes, remember that chemistry exam?
Oh, that's funny. So a few months ago, you had an event in New York. It was called Get With It, it being like IT.
Get with IT,
yeah. Keeping up with the new digital world. And I just wanted to hear more about that. What did you do? I know it's all about teaching people data skills or empowering people to learn.
Yes.
If you could just tell people more about that.
Yeah, so we start with Get With It, meaning Get With IT, and we're now calling ourselves Career Relevance. So right now, this is an exploratory project, and we've done some workshops, no charge. We're just trying to figure out what works. How can we teach data literacy, digital literacy, and discussions on how to talk about new digital technologies in a sentence. One of our simple examples is, let's say someone goes for a job interview, and the person's like a senior citizen, trying to get back in the workforce, or maybe they're returning to the workforce after being a stay-at-home parent or a caregiver or something, and they've sort of been out of it. And the employer says, well, what can you tell me about additive, what do you think about additive manufacturing? And if you don't realize that additive manufacturing means 3D printing, I mean, the interview is over.
Yeah.
But if you start like saying, oh man, that's the coolest thing, and I just held this printed spleen in my hand at this conference I went to, and amazing capabilities for this, for all kinds of manufacturing. And well, if you express that knowledge and enthusiasm in that moment, you're going to get the second interview. And so we're basically help people to get over their fear of data. So we're thinking about actually changing the title again to of our workshop. Not Get With It, not Career Relevance. We're just going to say data is not a 4-letter word. Because people have walked into the room. We did this 4-hour workshop, and people saw this free thing, and most of these people were, again, they're older people who are feeling displaced in the workforce, thinking all this new digital technology is pushing them out. They're going to lose their job. Digital stuff is going to replace them. AI is going to replace them. That robot
took my job.
Robot took my job. All these fears.
So
we demystify all that. We demystify all that and explain that that's probably not the case. It's just new jobs are coming, like any industrial revolution.
Right.
But we talk about all these things, and at the end of it, many people say, gee, I came in here fearing data, but now I don't anymore. So the idea is to get people comfortable with it. But one of the other major goals, I would have to say, is we're teaching people that they can learn how to learn. And so my example was, when the people I hooked up with up in New York City when we were doing this, we had a lot of conversations, but really the moment that clicked for them was I told them the story when I was teaching a freshman data science class at a university. When I was at George Mason University, I was teaching graduate and undergraduate level, but I taught this freshman class. It was mostly for students who needed a science class to graduate.
Okay.
So they took data science because it sounded easier than
chemistry
physics,
or biology.
Chemistry, biology. And more often than not, I get students come in there saying, I hate math, I hate science, all this kind of stuff.
Or I can't do it.
I said, I hope there's no math in this class, I can't do it, all this kind of thing. And I told them, I said, don't worry, there will be math in this class, but I'll teach you the math that you need. And so I actually taught them calculus without ever calling it calculus. And we actually used calculus in the class, but after I told them what it was, they were just like stunned. They couldn't believe that they learned it.
Well, it's like rocket science, right?
It's the same sort of thing. So what our goal is to have people in that place where they're learning this stuff and they realize that, my learning muscle still works.
Yeah. I
might be years out of school, or maybe I never even went to school, college, whatever.
Yeah.
That learning muscle is a natural human thing, right? Where our brains are wired to learn. I mean, that's what a neural network is. I mean, a real neural network, you're wired to learn.
Yeah.
I prove to people that they can learn, and so we're not there to be the end all be all like a data science academy or anything like that. We're just waking people's, brains up to like the world is changing. There's an industrial revolution happening called this digital AI hyperconnectivity revolution.
Yeah.
And it's affecting every single thing you touch and feel and work with in your life. And if you can carry on a conversation around that and be comfortable with that, you're going to be digitally relevant, career relevant. And so we get people to that place where they can just go, aha, I can learn stuff.
Yeah. And
so I actually go through Jordan's definition of data literacy. We spend the whole workshop doing the 4 steps that I mentioned, being able to read, analyze, work with, and argue with data. And we actually have them do those steps. Starting with Legos, we play with Legos. We learn how to sort them and recognize the shapes and sizes and colors. And I said, you're actually looking at that as data now. So in a sense, you're learning how to read data. And then we move that up to cash register receipts, and then we take out newspaper articles and sort them by topic and by kind. So we go through these whole steps, and at the end of it, I said, guess what? You're data literate because you just satisfied all the 4 characteristics.
Oh, that's great. That's a really
and
great
at the end of it,
approach,
people go,
yes.
oh my gosh. And then I teach them all about algorithms without calling them algorithms because that's a 4-letter word. That's a 4-syllable word.
Yeah.
So we talk about this stuff. I'll go
I have
over
to
them.
count.
Yeah, well, me too.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we show them all these kinds of things: classification, anomaly detection,
Without calling it that.
right, correlation discovery,
Yeah.
without calling it those things.
That's really great.
Then we do
actually.
hands-on exercises, and I said, you just learned data science. And at the end of it, people go, what? I mean, these are literally people off the street who just saw this thing advertised.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No charge, just downtown New York City. And we were quite challenged the first time we did this, because little did we know, the day that we scheduled, the morning we scheduled it, was the morning of the parade in New York City after the U.S. Women's World Cup.
Oh, okay.
Won the World Cup championship,
Yeah.
and they had the parade. But not only did they have the parade that morning, it literally passed right in front of the building where we were having the bank where we were renting space for the day.
Yeah.
So literally, access to where we were teaching this workshop was severely restricted.
Oh my God.
And yet we had a packed room of
How
people.
many people did you have?
Well, it was a small room. It was packed, but it was small. I mean, like
Yeah.
25 people.
That's still a good number.
And we just, we brought in, donuts and coffee, and gave them 4 hours of free time with Kirk.
That's really good. Just like I'm getting right now.
Telling them my stories, showing people that they can learn how to learn, and
Yeah.
I mean, the greatest joy as an educator for me is to see that moment of the expression in the student's face where they finally just get it. You can just see that aha moment. And that happened to me in that data science class. I have to tell you, one of those students who came to me at the beginning of the semester, he said he hated math, hated science.
Yeah.
I remember that guy well, and I told him, don't worry, I'll teach you what you need to know. At the end of the semester, he came up to me at the final exam. He turned in his paper, and he reached out to shake my hand after he turned in his paper, so I stood up to shake his hand. And he said to me, he said, Dr. Borne, I have to tell you that not only was this the best science class I've ever had, he said, this is the best class I have ever had.
Oh, that's great.
And he said, I want to learn more math and science.
Huh.
Because something was awakened in him.
Yeah,
And,
that he can do it, right? That's like...
okay, how much credit do I want to take for that? I won't go there. But I think data, since it's in the palm of your hand in your phone, and I use that example throughout the entire class, I use all kinds of examples of data on your phone. And they just got it. They just connected with it immediately. And when they saw that, hey, this is science, this is math, I can do this. Pattern detection, pattern recognition, correlation discovery,
Yeah.
predictive mapping, predictive stuff. I can do that.
I used that example in I gave a presentation recently about what makes a data scientist, and I talk about what you quoted in the Disruptors book about how we're all born data scientists because we start sorting the blocks and we start stacking blocks by playing with balls and kind of differentiating between shapes, and so we are all born data scientists.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Take that to the bank.
Yeah.
We're all born data scientists.
So
Everyone on LinkedIn is a data scientist, by the way.
everyone who's tuned in, you are all data scientists. You were born this way.
But it is true, everyone on LinkedIn says data scientist on their profile. But that's a different issue.
Or aspiring data scientists.
Ah.
But now they just dropped the word, right? It's just data scientist. Okay, so data literacy is good, right? We've established that. Is there a relationship between an organization that, let's call organization A very data literate, organization B is not very data literate? Do you think there's a relationship to how they achieve their business goals, or let's say revenue? Like a positive relationship with the entire organization understanding data and revenue? Can we make that connection?
Probably. I think some people have talked about this, that the differentiation between companies that win and lose are those that know how to extract value from data.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if there's any objective survey.
Like a study, survey
that
metric.
proves that,
Yeah.
even though I think there is.
But your intuition is saying...
I tweet 4 to 5 dozen times every single day different articles for the last 7 years. And I imagine there's probably 1 or 2 of those articles. But since there's about 100,000 that I've tweeted, I can't exactly remember.
You don't remember them? Really?
There was a time when I could remember just about everything. But
Really?
But it is.
I don't remember what I posted yesterday.
No, it's past that. Yeah, I'm at that place now.
It becomes so natural, right? That you just share without
in the early
thinking
days,
too much.
there wasn't a lot of this, but now
Yeah.
it's the volume of discussion and dialogue everywhere on this topic is everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
All right, so is there a specific technology that can help people become more data literate?
Ooh, yeah. I knew this question was coming, and I'm not sure I still have an answer. I think it's cheating to answer the question this way, but I'm going to do it anyway, and that is that smartphone in your hand.
Yeah.
Because again, once you start realizing everything that's in there that's got some data thing to it,
Yeah.
just for example, if you're using a map app,
Okay.
like for you want to find the time between this place where I am and where I'm going next,
Yeah.
like I'm going to the airport soon, and so you want to see the different routes and what's the optimal route, and so the app uses existing traffic data and even prior traffic data to know which way to direct you to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's data analytics.
Okay.
When you're doing a text message and it does autocomplete on the words you're typing, sometimes it makes a funny little mistakes.
Auto incorrect.
Yes. Auto incorrect.
Yes.
Auto
I have that a lot.
That happens to all of us.
Yes.
But it's really an AI in there. There's really a data science-y thing there that's looking at the sequence of words or the sequence of letters in the word, sort of predicting what the next word or the completion of the word should be. Okay, so it's actually, again, it's using data to inform that process. So if you do any online shopping on your phone, there's always like recommender engines recommending other products. That's data science as well.
Yeah.
So the more you recognize those things you're doing on that thing in your hand, I would say that's probably the most powerful technology because it's ubiquitous. First of all, it seems like everybody has that thing, and so that doesn't answer your question, but I think it worked for me in my class. Those students who came in there not wanting to learn this stuff, when they saw that the thing in the palm of their hands generates value, and business and jobs, and why not me? People start asking that question, why not me? And then all of a sudden, you get to that place where they just want to learn more.
Yeah, and I think so. Companies like Click, Tableau, and Power BI help to enable people to understand data, right? Most people would probably get intimidated if they see this huge database or a spreadsheet with, tens of thousands of rows of data and, hundreds of columns. But if you put it into a tool like Tableau and you can drag and drop things and immediately analyze data, I think that can in turn help you become more data literate because you understand it.
Yeah, I think you just
way.
hit the nail on the head there. So help me answer the question.
Yeah, I think I asked it wrong. That's what
that's fine. It just clarified for me. Yes, absolutely. If you're just staring at rows and columns of numbers, it's
right.
I mean, a lot of people have dealt with spreadsheets who are not data.
And there's a few number of people who could.
There are a large number of people who looked at spreadsheets and work with spreadsheets who aren't data literate.
Yeah.
But once they see there's a tool like the tools you just mentioned that enable visual discovery of patterns. Okay, so customer patterns or sales patterns or whatever kind of patterns.
Yeah.
If you can see that visually, again, because we are visual creatures, right? I mean, we are, of course. That helps you to see the value in it. But even more so, if you yourself discover something.
Yeah.
Okay, so you yourself now have made a discovery of some pattern in your data. You take it to, whoever the people are. You take it to your client, your boss, your manager, your colleague, whoever, and they sort of affirm that discovery. Say, "Wow, we never saw this pattern before, but you found it."
Yeah.
That's also self-reinforcing. That is, you realize that, hey, I can do this, and I sort of like that sort of self-reinforcement model of learning. It's like the child there's some kids once they learn to read. Let me talk now. I've been talking for 4 hours today nonstop. Some people, when they first learn to read, they can't stop. They just continue reading, and they become readers their whole life, right?
Right.
And so it's like that. Some people learn to write, then they can't stop writing. I mean, they just want to keep a diary and they do all this writing. So data science is like that. It's sort of like this old joke. They say you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach him to fish, you can get rid of him for the whole weekend. Data science is like that, right? If you give someone data, if you just give someone data, maybe you can occupy them for a day. But if you teach them data science and they become data literate, you can get rid of them for the whole weekend. That's a sort of joke there. But basically, people will go to hackathons on their spare time, on weekends, on nights, and what do they get out of it? But the pleasure of doing it, meeting new people, and getting some free pizza. I mean, it's like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do, really.
Yeah, so really, it's sort of self-reinforcing. when you first struggle with writing in the same way you first struggle analyzing data, it is a struggle.
Yeah.
But then you do that first discovery, and then you say, oh, wow, interesting, I can do this.
So,
Anyway, so I'm a big believer in just finding your passion in your day-to-day work, and it can be right there in front of you.
yeah, a quick follow-up on that question though. So we have these tools that enable people to, data democratization, right? Data for everybody. Everybody can access it, everybody can query it and come up with their own conclusions. But if they're not yet data literate, right, they maybe don't understand exactly how things work. I'll give you an example. I've worked with some people who have not had a great background in math, and they don't understand that if you're looking at, let's say, percentages, that you can't just add them together and get a total, because it's going to be over 100. So you have to take the average or something. So there are nuances there. Do you think it becomes dangerous to empower people who don't yet have that education, but have the tool that makes it so quick and easy and fun, to be honest, to just drag and drop and say, oh, look, this region's doing great, let's throw all our money in that and invest, yeah.
Well, certainly there are tools
Yeah.
For the citizen data scientist, which is part of the data democratization step,
Yeah.
which is putting tools in the hands of people who don't necessarily need the coding skill or the math skill, but they can do stuff that still has value to the organization. So that's part of data democratization and empowering that citizen data scientist. But I think also it's helping people to see, and I think I've already said this, but that everything is data, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a cash register receipt, it's not just a cash register receipt. It tells you what you purchased, what product categories, what time of day, what store you went to. Companies are analyzing this data to find out what things people are buying in different regions of the country, different days of the week, different times of day, different times of year, different product categories, what prices work, in terms of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, so if you look at everything as through the lens of data, this is data. Whatever it is I'm looking at is data. What value can I create from it? And then it doesn't have to be quite so mathematically complicated, because sometimes I was telling a story to someone today about this company found a coincidence between the birth date of this event that the customer is going to and the person's birthday, because they haven't had that information in their database, because it was an air travel agency and they needed the birthday of the customers. Anyway, so they had this little cake for the person on the airplane. Anyway, so it was this great celebration on the plane, and it generated a tremendous amount of public positive sentiment on social media.
Because somebody recorded it and shared
Yeah,
it, right?
and what? Okay, that would you call that data science? No, but it's being data literate. It's recognizing that date is equal to that date, and that actually might be kind of interesting from a human perspective. Again, data science perspective says that's just a coincidence between two numbers and two different columns. Okay,
Right.
That's not interesting. But the human perspective is, everyone likes to know, hey, it's my birthday today.
I'm special, look at me.
Yeah, I'm special, look at me.
I got a cake.
And so to be able to say, oh, let's do this for this customer on their birthday on our airplane while we're flying across the country. And the positive sentiment that they received on social media was enormous. I mean, I basically say that no marketing campaign, any amount of money, could have matched the positive customer sentiment that maybe $4 piece of cake created.
But then you can never predict that either, right? It could have been negative if somebody else was on the plane and it was their birthday too, but they didn't get a cake.
Well, I'm not telling you the full story, but the full story was it was actually a passenger's daughter who was flying with her. So the passenger was one of their frequent flyer passengers, and she was flying with her daughter that day, and it was her little daughter whose birthday it was. So if there's an adult on the plane that's upset because some child is getting a piece of cake and not the adult getting the cake, I think that person has a different problem.
Yes. I know we're running short on time, but I do have maybe two more questions. So one is, should organizations have a head of data literacy person, basically a champion that helps your organization become more data literate at all levels? Right, and who do you think would be kind of responsible for championing this effort?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of creating more positions.
More roles.
I like to joke with people, not joke, it's a true story, that about 100 years ago when the electricity revolution was starting, one of the main decision makers in corporate boardrooms was the CEO, the chief electricity officer. because people were afraid of this new thing, electricity. They didn't know how it was going to change their business. They were afraid of it. They didn't know what.
As long as there's a chief, it's all good.
Well, anyway. So we have that around chief data officers now, chief
Yes.
algorithm officers, and so maybe 100 years from now, people will laugh at us and they say, "Why did they do that?" Because electricity is part of your job, part of your infrastructure. Data is part of our infrastructure. So I think data literacy is different enough from data science. That is, data science is sort of the process by which we do discovery from data. Data literacy is just being able to converse with, recognize and see value in data, and be able to do evidence-based conversation and argument. So I think data literacy should be something that is practiced in the organization, but at all levels. And there will be people who maybe there is going to be a champion, like you say, not so much a chief data literacy officer, but someone who encourages sort of like those facets of data literacy, which is reading data, arguing with data, being able to analyze data, work with data, sort of requiring, for example, at corporate presentations or corporate meetings and stuff, to have people stand up when they're giving corporate presentations to emulate and to follow that process, and so other people can see it and repeat it themselves. So it's almost like good speech. I mean, I'm from the South, and people in the South say, "Hey, y'all."
Yeah.
And first time I went to Caltech in graduate school, one of the very distinguished British professors, I was talking with him like my first day at school.
Oh, you said, "Hey, y'all."
And I said something like, "See y'all later," and he said, "Please don't say that again." So I learned how to speak correctly in the proper environment. Anyway, no, it wasn't that scary, but it was like, but it sounded the way.
And you never said y'all again.
Well, it just was a little too informal for the moment. So,
Right.
And so anyway, so the same thing with the data literacy is we learn how to speak with and work with and talk about data in ways that shows we're all sort of upping our game, so to speak, around data.
Got it. So there's a comment, not a question, from Naif. So data is available. We need to specify what we need to have more focused analytics. Okay. We need to raise awareness about bad data and how it might affect the organization if we analyze it without doing the needed preparation, especially when it comes to any data visualization tool, that's what we were.
Yeah, and data prep,
yeah.
data cleaning, those are fundamental steps. And again, that's
They're not fun.
They're not fun.
They're just meant.
And they are a fundamental piece of data literacy. Because you recognize when there's gaps in the data, or maybe they're different units are not scaled properly.
Yes.
That's data literacy too. You recognize. My absolute most trivial example of data literacy came to me when I was very young. My first days at NASA, I was working in the Hubble project, and my job was to create a report of all the scientists who were using the Hubble telescope.
Okay.
And it was going to be broken down by the number of scientists for each state, like so many from California, so many from New York. Because this was an expensive telescope, and the representatives in Congress who paid for this thing with our tax dollars want to know there's fair representation across all the different
that everyone's
places.
using it, yeah.
And so I created this report, and I learned how to do some SQL reporting for the first time. Didn't even know what it was. So I did a select count by unique, and I just found the number of scientists using by state name.
Yeah.
And that first time I did that report, I discovered there were 93 states in the union, not 50.
So were some of them called inconsistently, I'm guessing?
Well, Massachusetts was spelled like 7 different ways. New York, surprisingly, was spelled 3 or 4 different ways because there was 1 word, 2 words, upcase,
There's a lot of ways you can spell New York, yes.
Connecticut, I won't even go there.
Yeah.
And it was an extremely small state, but they found every possible way to. Anyway, so.
Was Texas spelled right? Because.
Yes, I think so.
I can't imagine that
yes,
one. Yeah.
I think so. So anyway, so a trivial example, but there's an example where I could generate a report, and I happen to know that there's not 93 states.
Yeah.
But let's just say how many customers do we have from different business units? Well, what if I didn't know how many business units the company had? So what if the answer comes back, there's 93 business units and this many customers? If I didn't know that 93 was the wrong number,
right,
I could stand up in front of a board of directors and look extremely foolish.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, don't you know we only have 50 business units?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like someone saying you have 93 states and you know it should be 50. Well, if it was like the different provinces of Canada or some other country, maybe I don't even know. I probably don't even know the number of specific provinces and political subunits.
So domain knowledge.
So literally one of my,
Yeah.
I was on a PhD dissertation committee just a couple months ago. The student was analyzing data from Ethiopia, and he was talking about these different political subunits in the country, and it's like, I had no idea that there was that many.
How many were there?
I don't even know.
Oh, okay.
Because actually it was variable. It was in like the 80s or 90s.
Oh,
but
okay.
basically people just negotiate boundaries when the new people get elected. They say, well, we want that part of our.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
very fluid, and so it's really hard to do sort of a long-term analyses for policy when there's even the boundaries are fluid.
Yeah.
But anyway, so knowing that about your data is another example of data literacy. So it comes down to the data prep. So what do you need to do to get the data in a way that results make sense to people who are they're maybe not experts in the data, but they're experts in the domain.
Right.
So if you stand up in front of someone who's a domain expert and you say you have 93 business units and they know that they don't,
Yeah.
you are immediately not going to be listened to anymore.
Right.
It's like you don't even know what you're talking about. You just came in here and played with our data. You don't even know our business. So
And you might know a lot.
So
you just don't understand.
you know a
Can't
lot
make the
about
connection.
something they don't know a lot about, but
You know algorithms and programming, but you
Anyway.
don't understand what you're. Yeah.
So anyway, so I don't know if that answers the question, but I mean certainly or addresses the comment, but definitely data prep, data cleaning, data. I call it I actually call it having a first date with your data. I mean, it's getting up close and personal to see what are the foibles, the inconsistencies.
Do you light candles when you?
That's a thought. No, but really seriously,
Yes.
it's like finding all those little aspects of your data that are inconsistent
Right.
or need cleaning, or maybe there's data gaps and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it has to happen.
And so you got to have that relationship with your data.
Yes. Jerry Weiser just said context matters. So yes.
Oh
thank
man,
you.
you just hit my most favorite word in data science: context,
Oh.
context, context.
Yes, you said that in your presentation earlier.
Yes, indeed. Context is king
Yes.
because it tells you about your data, about what it is, when it is, why it is,
Yeah.
and it makes a whole lot of difference.
All right. Well, Dr. Borne, thank you so much for your time. I think we are at time. You have a flight in like
Yes.
5 minutes. So thank you guys for tuning in,
Yay!
and thank you again for your time. Right.
Yay.
Bye.
Oh, we're supposed to wave. Yeah, this is great. So thank you very much.